Hello everyone, I'm the last talker. I'm amazed by the things I've heard before, and yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a beautiful line going through. I was like checking, I was playing bingo, I was like, oh damn, I also have one of those slides. Oh god, transportation, god, I have to mention this from a different angle and so on. Really great stuff. I hope that I'll draw another line in here and accommodate the things that have been said already about artificial intelligence and give you a new direction, maybe something that we have been working on. We had a 2-year FFG project where we researched a lot in terms of natural language processing and triggering workflows from that, and I'll dive a little bit into that and do a couple of demos, so maybe something will break down, which will also be a lot of fun for everyone involved. But as I'm the last speaker, I have to do something with more impact, so I hope that Leonard cranks up the volume. I'm throwing in a video that I think
are kind of microcosm
something really nice.
The outside world. That's why games were invented. That's why humans find it fun to play. There's a rich history of computers tackling board games. It started with games like backgammon, drafts, and then finally there was Deep Blue in '97 that beat Kasparov at chess. Since then, the really big remaining sort of holy grail, if you like, has been Go. In chess, the number of possible moves is about 20 for the average position. In Go, it's about 200. Another way of viewing the complexity of Go is that the number of possible configurations of the board is more than the number of atoms in the universe. The way I see where we are now is that we've beaten the European champion now, and the next step for us is to try and challenge the legendary player Lee Sedol, who you can think of as the Roger Federer of Go.
Is this humanity's last stand?
For a major tournament pitting E against the AI program, AlphaGo gets started on Wednesday.
I am still confident that I will win against AlphaGo, but if I understand the algorithm of the program correctly, if artificial intelligence is able to imitate human intuition, it may be a challenge for me to win all 5 games.
This looks like he is still counting.
No, I think he resigned.
Wow, I think you're right. Wow. Wow.
We have a result.
There's our official result.
Yeah.
All right, well, congratulations to AlphaGo.
Because then White, oh, he resigned. It looks like Lee Sedol has just resigned, actually.
Scores another win in a dramatic and exciting game.
The world's best Go player, Lee Sedol, beat the AlphaGo artificial intelligence program in today's match. He had lost all 3 of the previous games. Lee has topped the world ranking for much of the past decade and confidently predicted an easy victory when he accepted the challenge.
I wonder if we have a resignation here.
It could be that Lee Sedol has resigned.
Yeah, I'm getting word Lee has resigned.
Yes.
So as you said, a couple points behind after
it's a pity. I would have liked to see the counting.
Yeah, we'll get an official count at some point, but I'm going to trust Michael's count on this. So I think we're going to be wrapping up.
all right, that's too frustrating. Let's move ahead. Bottom line, games are let's say the highest class of intellect you can throw at anything with your brain. It's how we learn, it's how we evolve as people. As you heard that game Go, if you think about the decision of who you should run over, a child or killing yourself or running against the wall, the decisions that are presented to you in a game of AlphaGo are more than there are atoms in the universe. The best place in the world when describing how they manage to do a move and Go, basically bring it down to intuition. There is no way, not even for AlphaGo, to really measure out all the options and possibilities coming from a move. So this is a really even almost spiritual game. And we have been beat at it. We have lost. And what does this mean? I think Elon Musk, first thing that guy tweeted, even though he's not in NLP, but he's a big name, so let's throw him in here. He said that artificial intelligence has jumped another 10 years ahead, and a lot of things that we predicted and that we thought would come in terms of how artificial intelligence is attacking also our workforce has been moved ahead by a decade. And that's a big problem. And there, I guess everybody watched the Space Odyssey. There are a lot of challenges coming up to us. So my talk is mainly focusing today on how everything that we ever knew is going to end and we are all going to die. and then I'll try to bring everybody up again. But it's Wednesday, so who cares? Yeah, about the German slides, please don't kill me. I will try to translate everything on the go. There has been a study conducted by Frey and Osborne for Oxford looking into the different jobs that are at risk in the next 10 years, basically. Here's a hint: if anybody just wants to have very secure job, like a very secure job, a very nice life where you can settle basically in your little woodshed or something, we all have to become woodworkers. They have a bright future. Apparently, it's going to take a long time to kill deers and plant trees and so on. So it's, but I mean, I can totally see like a killer deer murder bot that plants some trees. Yeah, but what you can see here on the right side, there is the high employment or the high likeliness to become unemployed, Dios mío. Transportation is the biggest one. I think we've talked a lot about this already. There are trucking companies already being set up, and I want to give a broader view on what this exactly means. While this guy is driving an Audi and feeling really comfortable not holding the wheel anymore, there are around 14 million people working in transport, so more than 10% of the whole US workforce, non-farmers, of course farmers not included. The connected industries are also highly at risk. So for example, in trucking, you have 7 million people driving trucks at the moment in the US, but only 3.5 million are really sitting inside of a truck. The others are working in garages or have to put packages inside and so on. A lot of logistics are of course lost because there are some things you just don't need to calculate in anymore. Yeah, there is less need for that many cars. I mean, I don't have it right now at the top of my head, but I think you are allowed only to drive for 12 hours as a truck driver, and then you have to make an intermission of at least 8 hours. At the moment, there is a very strict law in Europe, for example, meaning there have been different estimations, but around 20 times less cars are needed just in terms of moving stuff around. Just think about the cars that just are not going to be sold anymore in terms of like car manufacturing companies and so on. How many also how much employment around fixing cars and so on. How many park houses are at a loss. Of course, these aren't all factors that we would count in as maybe all too needed or too important, but that's not how it is. There are people working day and night in those facilities and then these jobs. It's really hard to translate this on the go, by the way. I'm sorry. Another thing which is also at risk are less work in hospitals. At least 2 million of injuries in the US are due to car accidents and so on. If they are reduced and if the cars somehow manage to run over less people, there's still less work coming in a way. And of course, there are indirect changes by just the general AI economy being blasted with trillions of dollars by people like the car industry throwing no money in this area. So there are a lot of indirect factors that contribute to a general movement of the AI scene moving up. I want to also roll back a little bit and not throw that many numbers in. I love these slides because I can just freely speak. There is a story of me. I've been a couple of times in San Francisco, and I have a friend there who works for a prediction algorithm company, one of those things with very long names that fill a whole house, a whole skyscraper somewhere in the city center of San Francisco. But the basic bottom line is they use certain algorithms to predict how the stock market is going to change, and then there was a floor that had to check if those predictions somehow seemed about right and then fill it in. And so they basically invested, and that was the thing they did. So one evening he came home and to the motel I was staying in, and I was like, let's call him Ben. Ben, what's going on? How's work doing? And he was like, well, I was working for the last months on an algorithm that basically is going to put this whole thing where we switch over from the predictions to the stock market is going to do it automatically based on the recent predictions and how it turned out. And I was like, so you basically, like, this guy is working in IT, right? These people seem to be secure for the next few decades. And he was like, well, so I practically finished and my whole floor doesn't do anything anymore. I was like, so what did you do? And he's like, I went to the top floor and I started to build a table because I really always wanted to build one, and it always struck me to do something with my hands. And I just want to give you this picture of somebody replacing around 100 people on the floor in IT with an AI-based algorithm that when it goes up in Silicon Valley on the top ceiling and starts to build a table. It goes all back to woodwork, I guess, in some way. So what can we do against this? Where's the Terminator in this whole machine story and this whole horror scenario? There is intelligence amplification. And the basic definition or the basic idea is that in contrary to AI doing autonomous work around a human without human interference in the best scenarios, IA is supporting or using algorithms in similar areas to support the human intellect and eliminate redundant tasks. I'm going to dive in a couple of them. I think one is always funny, one that everybody, or at least, it's IoT, so I guess 30% have it in their pocket. If my phone doesn't die on me, I guess everybody knows Siri or Cortana, right? So you can basically ask Siri something that you could have done in your phone anyway for a long time. But something that everybody should ask once in their lifetime is, let's connect me with the internet. There we go. Maybe you've seen it before. Siri, what is 1 trillion to the 10th power? Did it work? Give me a second. It wants to update now. So every Android dev is now like, yeah, there you go. Siri, what is 1 trillion to the 10th power? Does it work? All right, forget it. Something really funny, but that's, I guess, I'm going to do a lot of demo stuff today. The fun fact is Siri starts to beatbox, basically, or it gives you a baseline of stuff. But what it basically does is it connects to the internet and does some amplification of stuff that you would have done already, right? So you can schedule an appointment and so on, and use similar things that are already reachable to you to improve your current work situation, or that to at least remove stuff that takes away your daily work time. And the cool thing about intelligence amplification in general is it already works. I have to say it, AI has a lot of cool buzz right now, but 80% of it is not applicable to your life right now. It might take away a lot of jobs and so on, but intelligence amplification, on the other hand, has a lot more room for failure because it always hands you something where you can say, that's not correct, this is correct, and so on. Another thing that I guess a lot of people are talking about recently is bot communication. Microsoft has reintroduced or has jumped back into this topic by creating a huge bot network or a platform right now. They are really trying to push this issue. Atlassian is doing the same. IBM Watson is also diving into this. And Facebook recently jumped on the bandwagon again as well. And so I tried out Poncho recently. I wanted to do a demo here just to look at the vast opportunities that you can have, but it kept asking me about South Africa, and so I didn't want to show it anymore. But in general, the things you can do with those intelligence amplification tools is you can completely assist yourself in the stuff that you or that anybody that starts their work at your company on the first day. And all those redundancy has to be removed if we want to eradicate the threat of us losing our jobs. Another one is something where nobody loses their jobs, which is also always good to mention. The LAPD had a big problem. They have around 10,000 people employed at the moment. And there are a couple of departments that are completely split up, and I want you to think about this for a moment. They have car plate scanners that on the go scan every car that passes them to see how drivers move around during LA. Completely disconnected from the other workforce, right? They have 911 calls are not put or weren't put in 2010 on a global network or anything like that. They were physically printed out and had to be handed over. So think about this: you are somebody investigating a bigger crime, and you had to wait a couple of days for them to physically print out the communication they had. Then there was motor vehicle information, something located somewhere else as well. And then the field interview data. So when you were talking to witnesses and so on, you were having another data set, and all of this was completely disconnected. So they built a task force that was assigned to work exactly on this process, improve it, and this is something that falls into the category of IA because it doesn't do something autarkically or something like that. It needs still human input. It needs assistance, and that makes it a lot more efficient. Makes it a lot more efficient for us in the present. And there was a scenario: somebody got murdered on a crime scene, and recently, and the only thing witnesses knew was it was a white Cadillac, and they remembered 3 numbers. And based on this, the tool they employed, and based on the data they brought together, they were able to find a white Cadillac close to the approximate crime scene, and were able to catch the murderer 3 days, I think, after the crime scene. Stuff that completely fell through the cracks before that. And we are also invested a little bit in the IA thing. It's nothing too big. We are trying to understand what people are saying during a communication, during a conversation. So if I, for example, want my colleague Leo, I know, call the IoT team, something you would say. It's really hard to type with 5 fingers. Then you call the IoT team, number is, let's say, and so on. What we would understand is what he's saying, and we would provide certain actions to it. So the intelligence amplification here is simply actions popping up and workflows that can be triggered by it. Or if you say, for example, meet me on the, let's say, 26th of Jan, and you can write it in any way. It's of course a machine learning tool that gets better the more you throw at it. And the cool thing is, if this were an AI project, we would try to completely do it automatically, right? But we always present a button. We always have room for choice, and this also means we learn a lot more from it, right? If somebody ignores the button, or if somebody decides to not follow up with an action that we provide them with, they are capable they are still giving us information to learn from. And that's something, I think, it's somehow let's say it's like the helping wheels on the bike that is called AI right now, and it's really the one thing that is feasible and allows us to make broader moves and broader decisions. Sorry, I forgot to type this out, and everybody's waiting for this. It basically allows you to create a calendar, for example, jump to your calendar tool, to Outlook or wherever, and set up a calendar and have everything pre-filled that is can be derived from it. It also allows you to understand stuff like the classic things. Are you there? Or like noting what kind of question it is, if it is a yes or no question, if it's actionable or not, or one of the most important questions in life, I would say. Something like that, so you can like create a poll and so on. That's the basic drive. I think the basic thing you can take away from this is there is a big change coming up, and it's at our doorstep. And some of the biggest challenges, of course, the thing is, right? AlphaGo can beat you at Go, but they cannot go out and buy groceries right away. So the applicability of all of this is really, it's always really narrow. But this will change as we progress. And one thing that we can do is we can make bolder moves by going into intelligence amplification and do a lot more and invest a lot more in this area where we can get already results, and also something important where we can involve the public already. If you do, if you have an AI project, you can do this in a B2B environment. You can do it in a really closed area. But if you want to make a consumer product, always think about how you can involve them in a way that is still not unsettling to them. And if you have some way of intelligence amplification that you can apply to this, go down this road, because you will learn a lot more and you can create value today in terms of what you can offer to them. Yeah. In general, I think the way we are heading, or the direction we are heading at, is great. I really don't think that a human is at the top of their capacity if they have to drive between Graz and Vorarlberg their whole life. I really don't think. I think everybody deserves more. I think the most important question is who is going to benefit from the new automation. We were a lot. We had the same discussions, I guess. I wasn't alive in the industrial time period. And before that, everybody worked, I think, 60 hours per week. So there is some kind of improvement maybe around the corner, and maybe everybody will work 25 hours effectively in a couple of years if we find the right impulses and then really ask for our share in this new world that we are heading towards. And I guess that's basically it. Thank you very much. And any questions?
So, working? Yeah. Are there any questions from the audience? Nothing?
I don't want to lose more money. Let's get.
One.
You've seen nothing.
How do you see the near-time future for other input channels like speech in intelligence amplification, or maybe even in your product?
In general, I think getting the sentences out of or getting the sentences into a machine, like through voice input, is something that has been solved already to a certain degree in certain languages, right? There's a huge data set that, of course, like the Apple has in terms of Siri, right? And there are some APIs even in the market that would allow you to build anything on top of this within half a week. And so deriving anything, like the heavy lifting here is more like understanding the speech act, right? So understanding if somebody asks a question, if somebody assigns a to-do to somebody, and so on. So the heavy lifting is out there already, and the matter of input is something that has been solved to a certain extent. I absolutely agree that, or I guess I cannot speak for you, but I guess there is still room for improvement, right? And everybody agrees on that. I mean, I also struggle with Siri occasionally. I guess I did just, like 10 minutes ago. So I don't think the input will be the problem. We have enough data for that. We will have to understand clustering a lot better. Every human speaks differently. One of the biggest problems, even in human-to-human communication, is what the other person really means, and that's a notion that human can't predict, and machines tend to be a lot more explicit, and will, if they can ever develop frustration, I think it will be in the process of this.
Any other question? Oh, here we go.
Is there, do you have an idea what the discrepancy in different parts of the world in the reception of these new possibilities is? I mean, for example, there's a bunch of people who really don't enjoy talking to their phone. Like they'd rather maybe even use an old version of Google, just because they. So I mean, habit is a big factor.
Absolutely.
And so so, for example, we at some in the 80s we would have been able to use a picture phone. The technology suddenly was there to use picture phones. Nobody wanted a picture phone. And maybe, do you see some sort of margin of top-notch technology on the one hand that we could use and that it would be so much better? But in reality, we don't want that. And there's like another margin, which of things we do want. And like if we realize that, that would be good, because then we would actually be able to see what we can sell. And how far off is that other margin from the top-notch margin?
Sorry for talking over you. It wasn't out of disrespect. I was just amazed. These were 3 awesome questions, and it's really late. So you have to tell me again if I forget one. So I think the biggest one, or the one it's really a pushing one, is how do you change society in general, right? I think the last biggest billion-dollar fail in that regard, I guess there have been some on the way, was the Google glasses. Nobody wants to wear them anymore. I had 2 at my office because our sister startup was mad about it. And the biggest problem there in terms of changes is how convenient is it for you to use? And convenience means, with transportation, it's easy, it's money. And so if it's in a business scenario and it somehow saves up, let's say, 50% in that regard even, or even more, and also a lot of the variety or the risks that you have with humans just being on the job, I guess it's really easy. But if we talk about societal changes, and Siri is not used that much. The data, I think, is around 13% or something. It was in the Next Web recently. Not a lot of people really talk to it, and I think it's most of the time for presentational purposes to talk about intelligence amplification. But I think one thing people haven't talked that much about is control. And the Google glasses failed because they didn't give the people they were used on mainly, so the people that weren't wearing them, a feeling of how much they are in control. And the biggest societal changes come if everybody involved has the feeling that they are still in charge or still understand what is going on. And that's why we, for example, we didn't start with IA. We arrived at IA because first of all, we thought everything should be automatically and everything should be put in wherever it's supposed to be. But first of all, it doesn't work because AI isn't just there yet in many occasions. In some there is. So for example, we are capable of referencing files, right? And the beginning idea was, if you talk about any document, we just attach it. And people were running mad about it, and they asked us if we are listening to every sentence they say, and if we have like some assistant sitting in a cellar somewhere typing it out and searching for it and so on. And it was more convenient to them to press a button to receive the information. And so the short version would be, I think, the biggest reason why IA is capable of moving forward this whole discussion even is because the people involved that are using it feel more in control, because they always get some kind of feedback and can decide if they want to use it. And that it takes out one variable out of the process, and this is fear. And fear has to be removed first. And there were 2 other questions. You have to help me, or we have to...
The other question was, like, if you visualize this margin, like in percentage, like suppose 100% is like what the best technology can do, and where would be the other margin be that can actually be used and that is actually accepted?
Okay, so the variable of how much is out there that has been accepted is around 1%, and it's just because especially when it comes to technology, I think 1.3%, because these are the how do you call it, the innovators, right? After that, there are 13.6% of. Let me roll this out. I have it somewhere. It's funny to just improvise and drag it out, but I recently looked at this. I think I can find it on the internet, or maybe I have it in a presentation somewhere. But it's basically the concept or the question of how many people are, I think it's, yeah, there we go. How many people are really jumping on it? And I would follow this mass phenomenon to maybe describe it the best. And it's that thing, right? It's something that the innovation adoption life cycle. And it says 2.5%. Okay, I was off. Well, forget it. Let's run it down. 30.5% pick it up. Then the early majority arrives somewhere. Now we are at the late majority with Facebook, for example. And now based on technology, just technological limitations, we arrive, for example, in India and so on, and other emerging markets where in the beginning Facebook wasn't focused on and wasn't, and just infrastructure wasn't allowing it. So I would file especially the focus where Facebook is now operating the most or growing also the most, would be the laggards, but just in terms of, not in terms of how prone they are to technology, but just how easy it is for them to adapt it, right? By the way, something really interesting, Facebook brought in a day of slow internet to their week, so they can completely focus on emerging markets and have all the developers use Facebook when it's slow as hell. And this led to a lot of crazy cool improvements in terms of compression and in terms of stripping down functionality.
Okay, I know there's one question. Is it a really short one? maybe you can just make it bilateral then.
Let's make it that you can only ask it in one sentence and I can only answer it in one sentence.
Oh, that sounds good.
I don't know if you can answer in one sentence, but
that was the sentence.
I will try to reduce the question. What do you think about the acceptance of this? For example, there is a project which is open source, and I don't know if you know it. It's Zeitgeist in Linux, which tries to enable a semantic desktop. Mm-hmm. And it dies because the people don't accept it.
I have to add something to it to find it. I would love to, also for the other people to do. Software, all right. Okay, one sentence answer. Innovation applicability is based first on revenue, as I stated in our conversation. So adaptation will lag behind in the consumer market. But now, and that's the problem with open source projects, because they don't have necessarily the money to lift it up and bring it into a B2B scenario. But this is where something like that is applicable now, and where they also actively look for it. So, you know what I mean? Like, if you have an open source project, you sometimes have, it stays in a very universitary level until it gets picked up by a larger company. And this doesn't mean necessarily, that's nothing against open source projects, but it always has some derivance at some point where, for example, a company picks it up and then brings it into one of those CIO departments and then rolls it out with them. But it's something maybe that would go back and forth for long. Let's talk afterwards about it.
I mean, we are going to have some talks about open software and open hardware pretty soon. So we're just in the preparation stage. So if somebody else is interested, just follow our newsletter. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter and get the latest information about our next events. But thank you again, Felix. It was really interesting.
Thank you.